The year 1874 began for me at Budapest in the quiet of an unremarkable household. I remember Riverside mist most clearly, the world soft and unhurried around me, the days unfolding slowly. You need not follow every word that follows. Let your eyes close whenever they wish, and simply rest here with me as the story unfolds. The air held the damp scent of the Danube, mixing with the dry warmth of the stove inside our small room. My father was a rabbi, a man of deep faith and quiet dignity, yet our home was often filled with the uncertainty of tomorrow. I was born Eric Weiss, a name that felt too large for the small boy who walked those cobblestones. The days were long and filled with the necessity of labor, the need to earn every coin to keep the family warm. I remember the feeling of being small in a large, noisy world, the constant pressure to be something more than what the circumstances allowed. There was a time when I worked as a newsboy, shouting the headlines into the faces of strangers, trying to find a voice that would be heard. The streets were hard, and the nights were often cold, but there was a fire inside that refused to be extinguished. I found solace in the library, in the stories of great men who had overcome impossible odds. I read about the feats of strength and the mysteries of the unknown, turning pages that smelled of old glue and dust. The city around me was a place of constant motion, yet I learned to find stillness within the chaos. The year 1874 marked the beginning of a journey that would take me far from these riverside streets. I grew up in a world where the boundaries between the possible and the impossible were often blurred by the stories of others. My early years in Budapest and the later move to America shaped a perspective on freedom and confinement that would define my life. The memories of childhood in two different countries became the foundation for the man who would challenge the world. I carried the lessons of my youth into every performance, using them to connect with audiences around the globe. The narrative of my life began with a simple birth in a European city and evolved into a complex story of ambition. The family name of Weiss remained a part of my identity even as I adopted a new name for the stage. The transition from Erich to Harry marked the beginning of a new chapter in my personal history. I would go on to expose deceitful mediums as con artists and fakes in later years, but that path was not yet visible from where I stood as a child. The historical context of my birth year included the founding of the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. This organization was the world's first child protective agency and was sometimes called the Jerry Society. While this society worked to protect children, young Eric navigated his own path through the challenges of poverty. He eventually moved to New York City, where the pace of life accelerated and opportunities expanded. The city offered a stage for his growing repertoire of tricks and his unique style of performance. He began to refine the act that would make him a legend in the annals of entertainment history. The air in the theater backstage was filled with the scent of grease paint and sawdust. Dust motes danced in the single beams of light that cut through the heavy darkness. Old velvet curtains hung still and silent while the stagehands prepared for the next act. The wooden floorboards creaked softly under the weight of heavy props and costumes. A single oil lamp flickered on a workbench near the entrance to the wings. The air felt thick with the history of countless performances that had taken place there. The silence of the theater at night often felt heavy with the memory of our shared journey through the world of magic. A single spotlight would rest upon the empty stage where I once stood, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the still air. The velvet curtains hung in deep folds, absorbing the soft hum of the city outside the old opera house walls. Shadows stretched across the wooden floorboards, marking the passage of countless performances and the quiet moments between them. The scent of old wood and stage grease lingered in the cool air, a reminder of the labor that built our legacy. In this stillness, the promise of a message from beyond seemed to hang suspended in the dim light. The room held its breath, waiting for a signal that would never come, preserving the memory of the cold streets of Appleton. And the cramped tenements of New York is not a sharp pain, but a distant hum, like the sound of a train fading into the night. I was born Eric Weiss, a name that felt too large for the small boy who walked those cobblestones. The days were long and filled with the necessity of labor, the need to earn every coin to keep the family warm. My father was a rabbi, a man of deep faith and quiet dignity. Yet our home was often filled with the uncertainty of tomorrow. I remember the feeling of being small in a large, noisy world, the constant pressure to be something more than what the circumstances allowed. There was a time when I worked as a newsboy, shouting the headlines into the faces of strangers, trying to find a voice that would be heard. The streets were hard, and the nights were often cold, but there was a fire inside that refused to be extinguished. I found solace in the library, in the stories of great men who had overcome impossible odds. I read about the feats of strength and the mysteries of the unknown, letting those words become a shelter from the wind that bit at my cheeks. The smell of old paper and ink was a scent I carried with me, a quiet companion in the chaos of the city. I watched the world with eyes that sought patterns, looking for the hidden mechanisms behind the grand displays of the circus and the theater. The transition from the quiet of a Midwestern town to the roaring energy of New York was a shift in the very air I breathed. The city moved with a relentless rhythm, a machine that never slept and demanded everything it could take. I walked through the crowds, feeling the brush of shoulders and the heat of bodies pressed together, yet I felt a profound solitude within that mass. It was here that the name Erich began to fade, replaced by something sharper, something that could cut through the noise. The stage name Houdini arrived like a shield, forged from the admiration of a French magician who had once captured the imagination of a boy in a small room. I adopted it to carve out a space in a world that offered no easy paths for the poor and the unknown. My early years were a series of small failures that taught me more than any success ever could. I performed in dime museums and traveling shows, often for audiences that were indifferent or cruel. The lights were harsh, and the floorboards were uneven, but I learned to find my footing on any surface. I practiced the art of escape in the privacy of my own room, using the simplest of restraints to test the limits of my body. A chair bound with rope, a pair of handcuffs borrowed from a friend. These were the tools of my education. I learned that the body could move in ways the mind did not expect, that a joint could twist and a muscle could release if the focus was absolute. The sensation of the rope digging into the skin was a lesson in patience, a reminder that force was often the enemy of freedom. The relationship with my brother was a constant in the shifting landscape of my life. He walked beside me, a steady presence in the early days of our shared ambition. We performed together, two figures in a world that often demanded a single star. His trust was a solid thing, a foundation upon which could build the more dangerous illusions. We moved from one city to another, the train whistle marking the passage of our days and the changing of the seasons. The smell of coal smoke and the vibration of the tracks became a familiar rhythm, a soundtrack to our journey. We slept in cheap hotels and ate at tables where the food was often cold, yet our spirits remained high. The dream was always ahead of us, a beacon that pulled us forward through the darkness. There were moments of profound doubt, times when the weight of the struggle felt too heavy to bear. The rejection letters piled up, and the offers were few and often meager. I remember sitting in a small room, the silence pressing in from the walls, wondering if the path I had chosen was a mistake. The fear of failure was a cold companion, but it was also a teacher. It forced me to refine my craft, to study the mechanics of the locks and the knots with a precision that bordered on obsession. I learned that every lock had a weakness, every rope had a point of failure, and every constraint could be undone with the right knowledge and the right touch. The cultural environment of the late 19th century provided a backdrop of rapid change and industrial growth. The world was expanding, and the boundaries of what was possible seemed to shift with every passing year. I witnessed the rise of vaudeville, a new form of entertainment that brought together a diverse array of acts under one roof. The stages were filled with music, dance, and comedy, but I saw a place for something different, something that tapped into the primal fear of confinement and the thrill of release. I began to shape my act around these themes, turning the simple act of escaping into a narrative of human resilience. The audience came to see a man who could do the impossible, but they left with a story of their own potential. I became aware of the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children. During those formative years, an organization dedicated to protecting the vulnerable. It was a strange contrast to my own life, where the protection of the child was often left to chance. The society worked tirelessly to shield young ones from the harsh realities of the streets, yet I had navigated those streets on my own. My father's faith offered a different kind of protection, a spiritual armor that helped me withstand the blows of poverty and neglect. I carried the lessons of my childhood into every performance, using them to connect with the people who watched me. They saw a man who had risen from nothing, and in doing so, they saw a reflection of their own struggles and hopes. The name Houdini began to take hold, a symbol of escape that resonated with a public eager for wonder. I was no longer just a boy from Budapest or a newsboy from Wisconsin. I was a figure of myth and reality intertwined. The transition from Erich to Harry was not just a change of name, but a transformation of identity. It marked the beginning of a new chapter, one that would lead to stages across the globe and to challenges that tested the very limits of human endurance. The early struggles were the forge in which this new identity was tempered, the fire that burned away the uncertainty and left behind a core of steel. The air in the old theater is thick with the dust of decades, settling softly on the velvet seats and the wooden stage. A single beam of light cuts through the gloom, illuminating the motes that dance in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. The curtains are drawn, their heavy fabric hanging in deep folds that seem to hold the silence of 1,000 performances. The floorboards creak faintly under the weight of memory, a sound that echoes the footsteps of a man who once walked these planks with confidence. The smell of sawdust and old varnish lingers in the air, a scent that speaks of construction and deconstruction, of acts built and broken. In this quiet space, the chaos of the past settles into a peaceful stillness, a testament to the endurance of the art that once filled these halls. Every object in the room seems to whisper a story, from the faded poster on the wall to the rusted props in the corner. The shadows stretch long across the floor, marking the passage of time since those historic events first unfolded. The silence is not empty, but full of the echoes of applause that once filled the space, a sound that has long since faded, but whose memory remains. The texture of the velvet is rough under the touch of memory, softening the sharp edges of the past. It is a place where history rests gently, allowing the mind to wander through the corridors of time without fear or haste. The stillness is absolute, a perfect counterpoint to the frantic energy of the performances that once filled the space. I look back on those early days with a sense of gratitude for the hardships that shaped me. The cold streets, the empty rooms, the endless practice sessions were all necessary steps on the path to who I became. There was no magic in those moments, only the hard work of a boy determined to make something of himself. The fire that kept me warm was not a physical one, but a burning desire to prove that even the smallest person could break free from any chain. That desire has never left me, a constant companion through all the years that followed. It is the reason I continue to push the boundaries of what is possible, to seek out the impossible and make it real. The early struggles were not a burden to be carried, but a gift that taught me the true meaning of freedom. The water is cool against the skin, a gentle pressure that holds the breath in a suspended state. Here, in the quiet of the tank, time loses its sharp edges. There is no crowd, no shouting, only the rhythmic sound of my own heart, beating slowly, a steady drum in the dark. The chains are loose now, resting heavy on the shoulders, a familiar weight that brings comfort rather than fear. This is the place where the struggle ends and the stillness begins. I close my eyes and let the silence wash over, feeling the water support every inch of the body. It is a peaceful suspension, a moment where the world outside fades away, leaving only the calm rhythm of breathing and the soft, dark embrace of the deep. The journey from a boy named Erich to a man known only by the name of a French magician was a slow transformation of the self. I walked through the bustling streets of America with a mind that sought to understand the mechanics of the impossible. The early years were filled with the taste of cheap tobacco and the smell of sawdust in small vaudeville houses. I learned that a trick worked not because of magic, but because of the way light played on the hand. The audience watched with wide eyes as I manipulated small objects, their attention fixed on the simplest movements. I studied the locks with a patience that bordered on obsession, turning keys until my fingers knew the shape of every pin and spring. This technical foundation became the bedrock of a life spent defying restraint. I traveled across the ocean to the old world, carrying nothing but my name and a desire to prove that no cage could hold a human spirit. In the cities of Europe, I challenged the police to lock me in their cells, to bind me with their strongest chains. The crowds gathered in the squares, their faces a mix of skepticism and wonder as I stood before them. They saw a man who could slip free from the iron bonds of the law. The sensation of the cold steel against the wrist was a constant companion, a reminder of the limits I sought to break. I learned to read the tension in lock the way a musician reads a score, feeling the resistance and knowing exactly where to apply the pressure. The acts grew more dangerous as the years passed, evolving from simple handcuff escapes to feats that bordered on the impossible. I was suspended from skyscrapers, dangling by ropes that seemed to offer no support against the dizzying height. The wind howled around me, a chaotic force that tried to tear the body from the harness. I remained calm, focusing on the strength in the arms and the clarity of the mind. The straitjacket became a second skin, a tight embrace that restricted every movement of the torso. I learned to twist and turn within the confines of the canvas, finding the small spaces where freedom could be carved out. The world below looked like a patchwork of gray and brown, a distant map of a life that had moved too fast. One specific apparatus changed the nature of the performance forever. It was a glass tank, tall and filled with water, constructed in England to test the limits of endurance. I was suspended upside down within this vessel, the water pressing against the face and filling the lungs with a heavy, cold weight. The method required a complete surrender to the sensation of drowning, a controlled descent into the dark. I performed this act first for a single witness to secure the legal rights to the illusion, ensuring that no other could claim the method. The first public showing took place in a large hall in Berlin, where the silence of the audience was broken only by the splash of water and the final gasp of air. The visual impact of a man trapped in water while inverted created a sense of immediate peril that captivated the world. I escaped from this underwater box in front of thousands of people who lined the banks of the river in New York. The Hudson River was cold and gray, the water churning against the wooden pier where the crowd had gathered. The sheer scale of the event demonstrated the power of a spectacle that touched the fundamental human fear of the end. I felt the water rush into the lungs, a sharp sting that demanded total focus. The chains held tight, the glass walls closed in, and the only way out was through the mind. I performed a straitjacket escape while suspended 100 feet in the air above the busy city streets. The danger of falling added a layer of tension that was absent in the water or the small cells. The wind whipped the jacket against the body, and the ropes creaked under the weight of the struggle. I focused on the strength in the shoulders and the dexterity of the fingers, finding the release point with a practiced ease. The crowd below was a sea of upturned faces, their eyes fixed on the figure hanging in the sky. The moment of release was a sudden rush of air, a return to the solid ground of the stage. The silence of the theater at night often felt heavy with the memory of a shared journey through the world of magic. A single spotlight would rest upon the empty stage where Bess once stood, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the still air. The velvet curtains hung in deep folds, absorbing the soft hum of the city outside the old opera house walls. Shadows stretched across the wooden floorboards, marking the passage of countless performances and the quiet moments between them. The scent of old wood and stage grease lingered in the cool air, a reminder of the labor that built the legacy. In this stillness, the promise of a message from beyond seemed to hang suspended in the dim light. The room held its breath, waiting for a signal that would never come, preserving the memory of a vow made in love. Houdini's daily habits included long hours of reading and studying the history of magic to refine the craft. Rare books and artifacts filled the personal library, reflecting an intellectual curiosity that went beyond the stage. The mind remained active even during periods of rest, constantly analyzing the mechanics of new illusions and potential escapes. Solace was found in the written word and the tangible history of the art form. The collection of objects around the room served as a testament to a life's work and an enduring passion for the mystery of human perception. The magic created was rooted in the human desire to believe in the impossible. The personal life was a blend of public spectacle and private introspection, balanced by the steady presence of a wife. They faced the challenges of fame with a shared sense of purpose and a mutual commitment to the craft. The bond they shared provided a foundation of stability in a life defined by constant movement and risk. Even in the face of death, the connection remained a central theme of the personal narrative. The promise made to Bess became a final act of love, a bridge between the world of the living and the unknown. It stood as a poignant reminder that even the greatest escape artist could not leave behind the final barrier of mortality. The early life in a foreign land gave rise to a figure who would shake the foundations of belief. The path walked was not easy, but it led to a destiny of unparalleled fame. The memory of the birth in a city far from the stages remains vivid in the historical accounts. The journey from a simple boy to a legend was a long and arduous one filled with challenges. Each obstacle was faced with a courage that defined the character and the career. The world of magic owes a debt to the dreamer who dared to seek freedom and escape. The story of the final years and the grief of the widow adds a layer of poignancy to the legend. Historians continue to uncover new details from the vast collections that have been preserved over the decades. The impact of the career on the development of modern entertainment cannot be overstated or ignored. The central figure in the history of performance bridged the gap between the old world and the new. The legacy is secure in the hearts of those who believe in the power of human potential. The quiet endurance of the story offers a comforting sense of continuity in a changing world. The silence of the archive room is absolute, broken only by the soft rustle of pages turning in the distance. A heavy oak desk sits in the center of the room, its surface scarred by the ink of 1,000 letters and the burn of a cigar. The air smells of dry paper, old glue, and the faint, metallic tang of iron chains that have been locked away for years. A single lamp casts a warm, yellow pool of light onto the desk, illuminating the dust that settles in slow, lazy spirals. The shadows in the corners of the room seem deep and still, holding the weight of secrets that were never meant to be spoken. The objects on the desk rest in their places, waiting for the next curious hand to lift them with care. The silence is not empty, but full of the echoes of applause that once filled theaters long ago. The debate over the methods continues, yet the admiration for the skill remains undiminished by the passage of time. The name became synonymous with escape, representing the human desire to break free from all constraints. The narrative of the life serves as a reminder that even the greatest figures face the inevitability of mortality. The work endures because it touched the fundamental human need for mystery and the thrill of survival. The historical record of the early years remains a crucial. The year 1926 brought a different kind of heat, one that burned not from the stage lights, but from the heated air of a legislative hall. I stood before a committee of men who held the power to write laws, their faces lined with the fatigue of long debates. The room was thick with the smell of stale tobacco smoke and the scratch of quills on paper. They asked me to speak on the matter of fortune, telling on the men and women who claimed to speak with the dead for a price. My voice did not shake as I laid out the case for protection. It was a simple truth that the vulnerable deserved shelter from those who sold false hope. The hearings were described by observers as uproarious, a chaotic storm of voices rising and falling like a tide. This moment marked a peak in a mission that had consumed my thoughts for many years before the gavel ever fell. I believed that truth was the ultimate escape, the only key that could unlock the heavy doors of illusion. The legislation I supported aimed to criminalize the act of selling spiritual connections that did not exist. Although the bill did not pass in the end, my testimony highlighted the intensity of a national debate that had gripped the country. Historians would later note that spiritualism was often viewed as a short-lived religious phenomenon of that specific time. Yet its impact on the culture remained significant long after the initial fervor had faded into the background noise of history. I walked through the corridors of power with a sense of purpose that felt heavier than any straitjacket I had ever worn. The era also saw the rise of child welfare organizations that sought to protect the young from the cruelty of the world. The New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children was formed to address abuse cases that had long gone unreported. This group gained fame after securing custody of a mistreated child named Mary Ellen McCormack, a small girl whose suffering had been hidden in silence. Henry Berg led the effort to rescue the girl from her abusive guardians in 1874, a time when such intervention was rare and dangerous. Such social reforms reflected a growing awareness of the need for legal protection of children, a shift in the moral compass of the nation. I worked with child assistants in my shows, teaching them the mechanics of escape and the discipline of performance, yet I faced no formal investigations regarding their welfare. The historical record does not contain evidence of any such inquiries during my lifetime, a quiet testament to the care I took with those who stood beside me. My legacy remains one of a man who sought to bring light into the shadows of deception, to shine a lamp into the darkest corners of the human heart. I stood firm against the tide of superstition that swept through the post-war generation, a generation that had lost so much and sought comfort in the impossible. The world of my time was complex and filled with both wonder and skepticism, a place where the line between magic and fraud was often blurred by greed. The air in the library was cool and dry, smelling of old paper and the faint, sweet scent of binding glue. Sunlight filtered through the heavy velvet curtains, casting long, soft shadows across the worn wooden floorboards. A single glass case held a pair of antique handcuffs that once held the world in suspense, the metal gleaming faintly under the warm glow of a nearby brass lamp. The reflection of time seemed to settle on the surface, a layer of dust that had accumulated over decades of silence. Outside the window, the garden remained silent, with leaves drifting slowly to the ground in a gentle, rhythmic pattern. The air held a stillness that seemed to pause the very beat of the clock in the corner. A grandfather clock in the corner ticked with a steady, unhurried beat that measured the passing hours, a sound that was constant and reassuring. No one moved in the room, only the dust motes dancing slowly in the light, drifting without purpose or direction. A leather-bound notebook lay open on a workbench, its pages filled with careful sketches and notes on the mechanics of locks and the anatomy of chains. The silence was heavy with anticipation, waiting for the next act to begin, or perhaps waiting for nothing at all. My relationship with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle would later become a point of significant historical interest, a clash of minds that defined an era. The author was an ardent spiritualist who believed it was his personal mission to spread the religion of the dead to the living. He saw the world as a place where the veil was thin, where the voices of the departed could be heard if one only listened closely enough. I'd, however, remained a skeptic who used my skills to reveal the tricks behind spiritualist claims, to show the wires and the mirrors that hid the truth. These contrasting views on the supernatural added depth to my public persona and my legacy, a story of two friends divided by belief. I shared a life of quiet devotion with my wife, Wilhelmina Beatrice Bess Ronner, whom I married in 1894, a partnership that endured through decades of touring and the roar of the crowds. She was my anchor, my primary assistant, and a constant source of emotional support when the world grew too loud. Her presence was a steady hand in the chaos, a reminder of the real world that existed beyond the stage and the seance. This commitment to truth contrasted with the illusions I created on stage for the entertainment of the public, a duality that defined my existence. The early years of my life were quiet compared to the roar of the crowds I would later command, a time of preparation for the great acts that would follow. The streets of Budapest and the schools of Wisconsin were the first stages of my long journey, where I learned the value of movement and the power of adaptation. I walked these paths with a curiosity that never waned throughout my entire life, always looking for the next lock to pick or the next mystery to solve. The year 1874 marked the start of a life that would captivate the world for decades, a year of birth that would eventually lead to a death in 1926. The papers, documents, and artifacts associated with the magician, escape artist, and businessman are preserved for study, a vast archive of a life lived in the public eye. These records provide a window into the mind of a man who defied the impossible, who pushed the limits of what the human body could endure. The early life of my existence was a tapestry of movement, learning, and adaptation, a time of preparation for the great acts that would follow. The boy from Budapest became the man who could escape from any chain or lock, a figure who shook the foundations of belief. My legacy endures as a testament to the power of human ingenuity and determination, a story that continues to inspire those who seek to understand the art of illusion. The quiet beginnings in a foreign land gave rise to a figure who would challenge the very nature of reality. My life story continues to inspire new generations of performers who seek to push the boundaries of what is possible to find the truth behind the magic. The historical record of my early years remains a crucial part of understanding the illusion of danger and mystery that surrounded my name. My repertoire expanded to include escaping from chains, ropes slung from skyscrapers, and straitjackets underwater, each feat a testament to the strength of will. Each new challenge required a dedicated team to ensure safety while maintaining the dramatic tension of the act, a dance between life and death that was choreographed with precision. Rivals in the magic community often sought to expose my methods or challenge my supremacy, their voices rising in the night to question my integrity. Some magicians attempted to replicate my feats, while others publicly criticized my techniques as fraudulent, seeking to tear down the walls I had built. I responded to these challenges with a combination of legal action and public demonstrations of my skill, proving my worth through action rather than words. I maintained a professional distance from those who questioned my integrity, focusing instead on my own craft, on the perfection of the escape. The atmosphere of a late-night theater backstage offered a quiet contrast to the roaring crowds, a sanctuary of sawdust and old varnish. Wooden crates lined the walls, smelling faintly of the wood and the dust of 1,000 performances. A single gas lamp cast a warm, flickering glow over the scattered tools of the trade, illuminating the ropes that coiled neatly on the floor. Their fibers were worn smooth by countless hours of use, a testament to the endurance of the materials and the hands that touched them. The air held a stillness that seemed to pause time before the next act began, a moment of breath before the plunge. My family life remained a private sanctuary amidst the chaos of my public persona, a place where the masks could be removed. She hosted annual seances for 10 years after my death before finally declaring in 1936 that I had not returned, a decade of waiting that demonstrated the profound personal impact I held on those who loved me most deeply. This long vigil was a testament to her love, a refusal to let go even when the silence stretched on. Scholars later examined my lecture tours with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle to understand my battle against fraudulent spiritualists, digging through the archives to find the truth of our friendship. These historical documents reveal a man dedicated to exposing deception while maintaining his own sense of wonder, a balance that was difficult to strike. The book, The Unmasking of Robert Houdin, is available for free download on. The water is cool against the skin, a gentle pressure that holds the breath in a suspended state. Here, in the quiet of the tank, time loses its sharp edges. There is no crowd, no shouting, only the rhythmic sound of my own heart, beating slowly, a steady drum in the dark. The chains are loose now, resting heavy on the shoulders, a familiar weight that brings comfort rather than fear. This is the place where the struggle ends and the stillness begins. I close my eyes and let the silence wash over, feeling the water support every inch of the body. It is a peaceful suspension, a moment where the world outside fades away, leaving only the calm rhythm of breathing and the soft, dark embrace of the deep. That glass tank became the center of my world for many years, a vessel of water and light that held the attention of thousands. I remember the first time I constructed it in England, the smell of fresh varnish and the cool touch of the glass panels as they were fitted together. It was built with a precision that bordered on obsession, for the margin for error was non-existent. The water inside had to be perfectly clear, reflecting the stage lights like a mirror, yet heavy enough to drown a man in seconds. I called it the Upside Down, a simple name for a complex trap of my own making. The locks were intricate, designed to hold firm against the frantic movements of a human body fighting for air. I tested them in secret, learning the exact pressure required to break the seal without shattering the glass. This act was not merely a trick, but a declaration of the limits of human endurance. I suspended myself headfirst in that tank, feeling the cold water rush into my lungs, waiting for the moment my lungs would burn and my mind would seek a way out. The audience watched in a silence that felt heavier than the water itself. They held their breath with me, their eyes wide, waiting to see if I would rise or sink. When I finally broke free, gasping for air, the roar that followed was a sound of pure relief, a release of tension that swept through the theater like a wave. That performance in Berlin was the beginning of a new chapter, a moment where the art of escape reached its most dangerous and beautiful form. A quiet room in a European theater from 1912 holds the memory of the first public performance of the water torture cell. The velvet seats are empty now, but the air still feels heavy with the anticipation of that night. Dust motes dance in the single beam of light that cuts through the darkness of the auditorium. The glass of the tank, now removed, once reflected the faces of thousands of spectators who watched in silence. The water that filled the cell was clear and cold, a stark contrast to the warm glow of the stage lights. A single chair sits in the center of the stage, waiting for a performer who will never return. The silence is deep and meditative, broken only by the soft hum of the building settling into the night. The shadows stretch long across the floorboards, marking the passage of time since those historic events. The room feels suspended in a moment of stillness, preserving the atmosphere of a bygone era of wonder. The texture of the velvet curtains is rough under the touch of memory, softening the sharp edges of the past. Every object in the space seems to hold a story, whispering tales of courage and deception to those who listen closely. The quietude of the room offers a peaceful respite from the chaos of the world outside. It is a place where history rests gently, allowing the mind to wander through the corridors of time without fear or haste. The stillness is absolute, a sanctuary where the echoes of applause and the splash of water fade into a gentle hum. From that tank, my world expanded to include the open sky and the busy streets of New York. I moved from the confined space of the water to the vastness of the air, hanging by ropes slung from skyscrapers that pierced the clouds. The wind was a different kind of pressure, cold and biting, yet it carried a freedom that the water could not. I was suspended hundreds of feet above the pavement, the city a mosaic of tiny lights and moving cars below. The leather straps bit into my wrists, and the straitjacket constricted my chest, but the danger was real and immediate. If I failed to escape, the fall would be final. The crowd gathered along the riverbanks, a sea of faces looking up, their mouths open in a collective gasp. I worked with a calmness that surprised even myself, my fingers finding the knots and locks with a practiced ease. The sun was warm on my back while the wind chilled my face, a contrast that sharpened my senses. Each escape was a conversation with gravity, a negotiation between the body and the earth. I learned that fear was a signal, not a command, and that the mind could remain clear even when the body was in peril. These stunts were not just displays of strength, but meditations on the fragility of life and the resilience of the human spirit. The years passed, and the nature of my work shifted from the spectacle of escape to the quiet investigation of deception. The world had changed, and with it, the nature of the threats I faced. The rise of charlatans who claimed to speak with the dead became a new kind of prison, one that trapped the vulnerable in grief and false hope. I felt a deep responsibility to expose these lies, to bring light into the darkened rooms where the fraudulent mediums performed their tricks. I attended séances in dimly lit parlors, sitting in the shadows, watching the subtle movements of the hands and the flicker of the lights. I saw the wires, the hidden mirrors, and the secret compartments that were used to create illusions of the supernatural. The air in these rooms was thick with the scent of incense and the murmur of desperate voices. I felt a sorrow for those who believed, a pity for their longing to connect with those who were gone. My mission was not to mock their grief, but to protect them from those who would exploit it. I testified before Congress, speaking of the need for critical thinking and the importance of truth in an age of mass media. The hearing was a loud and chaotic affair, filled with shouting and argument, yet I remained calm, my voice steady as I laid out the facts. I saw the power of the truth as a force that could break chains just as surely as any physical lock. The archives of the Schubert organization now hold the records of those times, the ledgers and letters that document the business of magic. These documents are stored in a building on West 45th Street, where the dust settles on the shelves of history. Researchers must apply for appointments to view the materials to trace the path of a career that spanned decades. The papers smell of old ink and aged paper, a scent that evokes the smell of the theaters where I once performed. The wooden floorboards creak under the weight of the present, just as they did under the weight of the past. A single oil lamp flickers on a workbench, casting long shadows that dance across the walls. The atmosphere is one of quiet reverence, a place where the stories of the past are kept safe from the ravages of time. Every file contains a piece of the puzzle, a clue to the mechanics of the shows that captivated the world. The Schubert brothers were masters of their craft, just as I was a master of mine. Their archives preserve the legacy of an era when the theater was the center of the world, when the magic of the stage could transport a person to another time and place. In my later years, I found a different kind of freedom, one that came from the acceptance of the natural order. The desire to overcome every obstacle, to escape every trap, eventually gave way to a deeper understanding of the human condition. I realized that the greatest escape was not from a box or a chain, but from the illusion of permanence. The body is temporary, and the mind must learn to let go. The water that once held me captive now flows freely, carrying the memories of those days into the great river of time. The crowds have dispersed, the lights have dimmed, but the spirit of the work remains. It is a testament to the power of human will and the limits of physical possibility. The legacy of those performances continues to inspire, a reminder that even in the face of impossible odds, there is always a way forward. The silence of the room is a companion now, a friend that understands the weight of the journey. I sit in the quiet, listening to the soft hum of the building, and I feel a deep sense of peace. The struggle is over, and the stillness has begun. The water is cool, the air is still, and the heart beats slowly, a steady drum in the dark. The historical record shows that the curtain rose on a world built entirely of light and shadow, where the air itself seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. I learned early that the trick was never just the movement of the hands, but the careful architecture of the moment before the reveal. The stage was a kingdom of suspended time, a place where the laws of nature could be politely asked to step aside for a while. I moved from the small halls of vaudeville to the great theaters of the world, carrying the same simple tools but weaving them into stories that touched the soul. The lighting was never random. It was a character in the play, carving out shapes of mystery in the heavy velvet dark. Music swelled and receded like the tide, guiding the audience through a landscape of wonder without them ever knowing the path. Every performance was a unique conversation, a silent dialogue between the will of the performer and the hope of the spectator. I treated each show not as a repetition of a formula, but as a fresh opportunity to test the limits of what a human being could endure and achieve. The evolution of the act was slow and deliberate, moving from simple escapes to complex narratives that demanded the full attention of the crowd. There was a deep respect for the craft, a belief that the illusion must be perfect to honor the trust placed in it. The confidence grew with every lock picked and every chain broken, turning fear into a tool of the trade. I adapted to new challenges as they arose, keeping the act fresh and exciting for decades of changing tastes. The historical record shows that the New York Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Children was founded in 1874, the same year I was born, a world that sought to protect the young while I learned to protect myself. That early environment of uncertainty shaped a perspective that valued freedom above all else, turning the constraints of poverty into a drive for liberation. The journey from a boy named Erich to the man known as Houdini was a transformation of identity as much as skill. The name change was a deliberate act of creation, a way to step into a new life that felt larger than the one I had left behind. I carried the memories of Budapest and Wisconsin into every performance, using the lessons of confinement to connect with people from every walk of life. The narrative of the act was always about the human spirit, the desire to overcome the impossible odds that life presents. I sought to understand the principles behind the deceptions of others, studying the works of earlier magicians to find the threads of truth hidden in the lies. This intellectual curiosity set me apart, driving a need to know not just how to escape, but why the escape mattered so deeply. The cultural environment of late 19th century America provided a fertile ground for these talents to bloom, a time when the rise of vaudeville offered a stage for the extraordinary. I witnessed the growth of a nation that was eager for spectacle, for a moment where the ordinary could be suspended in favor of the miraculous. The transition from modest beginnings to global fame was driven by an unyielding determination that refused to accept the boundaries of the possible. A quiet room in a European theater from 1912 holds the memory of the first public performance of the water torture cell. The velvet seats are empty now, but the air still feels heavy with the anticipation of that night. Dust motes dance in the single beam of light that cuts through the darkness of the auditorium. The glass of the tank, now removed, once reflected the faces of thousands of spectators who watched in silence. The water that filled the cell was clear and cold, a stark contrast to the warm glow of the stage lights. A single chair sits in the center of the stage, waiting for a performer who will never return. The silence is deep and meditative, broken only by the soft hum of the building settling into the night. The shadows stretch long across the floorboards, marking the passage of time since those historic events. The room feels suspended in a moment of stillness, preserving the atmosphere of a bygone era of wonder. The texture of the velvet curtains is rough under the touch of memory, softening the sharp edges of the past. Every object in the space seems to hold a story, whispering tales of courage and deception to those who listen closely. The quietude of the room offers a peaceful respite from the chaos of the world outside. It is a place where history rests gently, allowing the mind to wander through the corridors of time without fear or haste. The stillness is absolute. The legacy of this work is found in the countless performers who followed, each adding their own voice to the chorus of wonder. I proved that magic could be both an art form and a test of human limits, a duality that kept the audience engaged and the mind open. The careful construction of the acts showed a deep respect for the craft of illusion, treating every performance as a unique opportunity to demonstrate the power of human will. The evolution of the style reflected a growing confidence and mastery over the material, moving from simple tricks to complex narratives that engaged the imagination. The artistic development remains a subject of study for historians of performance, a testament to the dedication that ensured the name would endure long after the final curtain fell. The major works stand as monuments to skill and an unwavering commitment to the craft, reflecting the anxieties and hopes of a society undergoing rapid change. The enduring appeal lies in the universal desire to overcome impossible odds and constraints, a desire that resonates across generations. In the later years, the focus shifted from creating illusions to exposing deceitful mediums who claimed to speak with the dead. This commitment to truth contrasted with the illusions created on stage, revealing a complex mind that valued honesty even within the world of deception. The study of these achievements and failures offers insight into the cultural context of the early 20th century, a time when the boundaries of science and spirit were being tested. The life serves as a testament to the power of human will and the limits of physical possibility, a story that continues to inspire magicians and skeptics alike around the world. The narrative is one of constant evolution and relentless pursuit of perfection, a journey that never truly ends as long as there are locks to be picked and chains to be broken. The influence on the art of magic was profound and lasting, setting a new standard for what a performer could achieve on a stage. The transformation from a boy in a small town to a global icon was complete through hard work and an unyielding belief in the power of the human spirit. The name Houdini became a symbol of freedom, a word that meant the impossible was merely a challenge waiting to be met. The visual record of the performances shows a man fully committed to the moment, every muscle and thought focused on the task at hand. The stories of the escapes are not just tales of physical prowess, but of mental discipline, a calm focus that could withstand the pressure of the deep or the heat of the spotlight. The memories of the crowds, the gasps, and the silence are preserved in the history of the stage, a record of a time when wonder was a daily occurrence. The work inspired a new era of theatrical entertainment that captivated audiences worldwide, changing the way people saw a world and their place within it. The dedication to the craft ensured that the name would endure, a beacon of light in the darkness of the unknown. The evolution of the act was a reflection of the times, adapting to the changing tastes and fears of the public while maintaining the core of the performance. The ability to adapt to new challenges kept the act fresh and exciting for decades, a testament to the flexibility of the human mind. The legacy is found in the countless performers who followed, each carrying the torch of the art forward into new generations. The story is one of courage and deception, of truth and illusion, woven together into a tapestry that remains vibrant long after the threads have faded. The quiet room in the theater holds the memory, but the spirit of the performance lives on in the imagination of those who dare to dream of escape. The stillness of the present allows the mind to rest, knowing that the struggle was real and the triumph was earned. The water is cool against the skin, a gentle pressure that holds the breath in a suspended state, a reminder of the peace found after the storm. The chains are loose now, resting heavy on the shoulders, a familiar weight that brings comfort rather than fear. This is the place where the struggle ends and the stillness begins, a moment where the world outside fades away. The rhythmic sound of the heart beats slowly, a steady drum in the dark, marking the passage of time in a world that has finally made sense. The silence washes over, feeling the water support every inch of the body, a peaceful suspension where the mind can wander without fear. The deep embrace of the dark offers a final rest, a place where the story can be laid down and the journey can be remembered with a calm and accepting heart. The legacy is not in the tricks themselves, but in the feeling they left behind, a sense that anything is possible if one is willing to try. The name remains a symbol of that belief, a whisper of hope in the quiet of the night. The story is complete, the curtain has fallen, and the silence is absolute. The years moved with a different rhythm as the body began to show the wear of constant motion. I understood that the flesh has a limit, a final boundary that no amount of will or training could push back forever. The crowd still cheered, their voices rising like a tide, but I felt the weight of time pressing against my shoulders. On a cold day in late December, a film crew arrived to capture the mechanics of my final escapes before the camera. The lights were bright and hot, casting long shadows across the quiet studio floor. We worked in silence, the only sound the steady hum of the projector and the splash of water in the tank. This footage was meant to be a permanent record, a map of the tricks that had defined a lifetime of performance. I watched the lens focus on my hands, seeing the familiar calluses and the steady grip that had held so many chains. It was a strange feeling to see oneself frozen in time, captured on celluloid while the world continued to turn outside the studio walls. The tour schedule remained grueling, a relentless cycle of trains and hotels that demanded more than the body could easily give. Bess walked beside me through it all, her presence a steady anchor in the chaos of the road. She managed the business, her hands signing papers and organizing the logistics that kept the show running smoothly. We had shared this life since the days when we were young and full of untested dreams. The partnership we built was the foundation of everything the public saw, though they rarely understood the quiet work that happened behind the curtain. While the stage demanded spectacle, our private world offered a sanctuary of simple rhythms. We found peace in the ordinary moments, away from the glare of the spotlight and the demands of the fans. In those quiet hours, I was not a legend or an escape artist, but simply a man resting with the woman who knew him best. This devotion was the true magic, the bond that survived the applause and the silence alike. My focus shifted toward exposing those who claimed to speak with the dead. I believed that true wonder belonged to the living, to the tangible world of flesh and bone. The grief of others was too often exploited by charlatans who sold false hope for a price. I gave lectures on this subject, traveling from town to reveal the tricks behind the spiritualist sciences. The work was difficult, requiring a patience I had to cultivate alongside my physical endurance. I explained the mechanics of the table tipping and the spirit riding, showing how easily the mind could be deceived. The audience listened in silence, some with anger, others with a dawning clarity. It was a necessary battle, fought not for fame, but for the truth of human experience. The water tank remained suspended in the air, a constant reminder of the dangers I faced, yet I performed the Chinese water torture cell until the very end. The water was always cool, the glass always clear, and the escape always precise. A single wooden chair sits in the corner of this room, its surface worn smooth by years of use. The wood is dark and heavy, stained by the oils of hands that have gripped it during moments of deep thought. A faint scent of old varnish and dust lingers in the air, mixing with the dry smell of the leather bindings on the nearby shelf. Light filters through the high window, catching the slow drift of dust, motes that dance in the stillness. There is no sound here except the occasional creak of the floorboards as the building settles into the night. The chair waits for a sitter, holding the memory of 1,000 conversations and quiet reflections. It is a simple object, yet it holds the weight of a life lived in constant motion. The silence is deep and comfortable, a place where the mind can rest without the need for movement or explanation. The promise made to Bess became a final act of love, a bridge between the world of the living and the unknown. I told her that if I were to pass, she would know it by a specific signal. It was a foolish hope, perhaps, born of the desire to connect even after the end. The idea that a message could come through the darkness was a comfort I held on to. Yet I knew deep down that the greatest escape artist could not leave behind the ties of the heart. The body is a vessel that must eventually return to the earth, but the love shared remains a part of the story. The quiet moments of our life together were as significant as the loud applause of the crowds. They were the true measure of a life well lived, the foundation upon which the spectacle was built. The end came in Detroit in the late autumn of 1926. The pain began in the abdomen, a sharp and sudden fire that spread through the body with terrifying speed. The doctors did their best, but the infection had moved too far to be stopped by their hands. I lay in the hospital bed, listening to the hum of the city outside the window, feeling the strength slowly drain away. The world did not stop turning, even as my own world began to fade into the distance. Bess was there, her hand in mine, her face a mask of quiet sorrow. She knew the promise would not be kept, that no signal would come through the darkness. The silence of the theater at night often felt heavy with the memory of our shared journey. A single spotlight would rest upon the empty stage where she once stood, illuminating the dust motes that danced in the still air. The velvet curtains hung in deep folds, absorbing the soft hum of the city outside the old opera house walls. Shadows stretched across the wooden floorboards, marking the passage of countless performances and the quiet moments between them. The scent of old wood and stage grease lingered in the cool air, a reminder of the labor that built our legacy. In this stillness, the promise of a message from beyond seemed to hang suspended in the dim light. The room held its breath, waiting for a signal that would never come, preserving the memory of a vow made in love. Harry Houdini passed away on October 31st, 1926, at the age of 52. The date is etched in the history of the world, a marker of the end of a remarkable journey. The promise of a message from the spirit world remained unfulfilled, as no signal ever came through the darkness. Bess continued to hold the annual Say Ain'ts for many years, hoping against hope for a sign from her husband. She would light a candle and wait in the silence, listening for any sound that might indicate his presence. The years passed, and the world moved on, but her devotion never wavered. The legacy endured through the films and the stories people told about the escapes. The name became synonymous with the impossible, and the influence on the art of magic remained strong for generations. The final chapter closed quietly, leaving behind a rich history of wonder and mystery. The resting place is in Brooklyn, where the grave became a quiet site of pilgrimage for many admirers. The public memory shifted gradually from the spectacle of escape to a deeper appreciation of the artistry. Critics initially debated the nature of the feats, yet time eventually solidified the status as a master performer. The famous Chinese water torture cell was restored and later sold at auction to a new owner in 2004. This specific artifact traveled through history, carrying the weight of the most dangerous and celebrated illusion. The Houdini Magical Hall of Fame, where the cell was displayed from 1971, burned to the ground in 1995. That fire destroyed a physical link to the past, yet the memory of the escape survived in books and films. Bess hosted annual séances for 10 years after the death, before finally declaring in 1936 that he had not returned. This decade of waiting demonstrated the profound personal impact held on those who loved him most deeply. Scholars later examined the lecture tours with Sir Arthur Conan Doyle to understand the complex relationship between belief and skepticism. The impact on the development of modern entertainment cannot be overstated or ignored. The name remains a central figure in the history of performance, bridging the gap between the old world and the new. The legacy is secure in the hearts of those who believe in the power of human potential. The quiet endurance of the story offers a comforting sense of continuity in a changing world. The collection of rare books and artifacts remains a testament to the life's work and the enduring passion for the mystery of human perception. The magic created was rooted in the human desire to believe in the impossible. The personal life was a blend of public spectacle and private introspection, balanced by the steady presence of the wife. The challenges of fame were faced with a shared sense of purpose and a mutual commitment to the craft. The bond shared provided a foundation of stability in a life defined by constant movement and risk. Even in the face of death, the connection remained a central theme of the personal narrative. The promise made became a final act of love, a bridge between the world of the living and the unknown. It stood as a poignant reminder that even the greatest escape artist could not leave behind the ties of the heart. The silence in the room is not empty, but full of the echoes of applause that once filled theaters long ago. Modern audiences view a life through a lens of both fascination and historical scrutiny. The debate over methods continues, yet the admiration for skill remains undiminished by the passage of time. My name became synonymous with escape, representing the human desire to break free from all constraints. The narrative of that life serves as a reminder that even the greatest figures face the inevitability of mortality. Work endures because it touched the fundamental human need for mystery and the thrill of survival. The story of final years and the grief of a widow adds a layer of poignancy to the legend. Historians continue to uncover new details from the vast collections that have been preserved over the decades. The impact of the career on the development of modern entertainment cannot be overstated or ignored. I remain a central figure in the history of performance, bridging the gap between the old world and the new. Legacy is secure in the hearts of those who believe in the power of human potential. The quiet endurance of the story offers a comforting sense of continuity in a changing world. The resting place remains a quiet site of pilgrimage for many admirers in Brooklyn. The public memory of the life shifted gradually from the spectacle of escape to a deeper appreciation of artistry. Critics initially debated the nature of feats, yet time eventually solidified the status as a master performer. The famous Chinese water torture cell was restored and later sold at auction to a famous magician in 2004. This specific artifact traveled through history, carrying the weight of the most dangerous and celebrated illusion. The Magical Hall of Fame, where the cell was displayed from 1971, burned to the ground in 1995. That fire destroyed a physical link to the past, yet the memory of the escape survived in books and films. A wife hosted annual séances for 10 years after death, before finally declaring in 1936 that he had not returned. This decade of waiting demonstrated the profound personal impact held on those who loved most deeply. Scholars later examined lecture tours with a famous author to understand the battle against fraudulent spiritualists. These historical documents reveal a man dedicated to exposing deception while maintaining a own sense of wonder. The book Unmasking the French Magician Who Inspired is available for free download on the Internet Archive for modern researchers. Digital access allows students to read original arguments against the claims of the past. The Internet Archive requires JavaScript to be enabled for full functionality on many modern devices. This technical requirement ensures that the text remains accessible to a global audience seeking historical truth. Material from various private collections was added to the main archive in 2018 to preserve more history. These additions included letters and props from the Albert Davis, Robert Downing, and other significant collectors. The modern significance of work extends beyond magic into the realms of psychology and performance art. I am now recognized as a pioneer who understood the power of suggestion and the limits of human endurance. The story continues to inspire new generations of performers who seek to push the boundaries of what is possible. The legacy of the struggle against the supernatural remains a testament to the commitment to rational thought. Sunlight filters through heavy velvet curtains, casting long, soft shadows across the worn wooden floorboards. A single glass case holds a pair of antique handcuffs that once held the world in suspense. The metal gleams faintly under the warm glow of a nearby brass lamp, reflecting the patience of time. Outside the window, the garden remains silent, with leaves drifting slowly to the ground in a gentle rhythm. The air smells faintly of old paper, and the dry scent of preserved leather bindings. A grandfather clock in the corner ticks with a steady, unhurried beat that measures the passing hours. No one speaks in this space, for the history here is too deep for casual conversation. The objects rest in their places, waiting for the next curious hand to lift them with care. The silence is not empty, but full of the echoes of applause that once filled theaters long ago. The quiet room where scholars study these documents feels still and filled with the dust of ages. The work of preserving the past has become a labor of love for many dedicated custodians. Letters written in hurried handwriting now rest in acid-free boxes, safe from the ravages of time. Photographs of crowded stages show faces frozen in expressions of awe and disbelief. These images capture a moment when the impossible seemed within reach of a single human will. The influence on the art of illusion is seen in every act that follows, from the smallest parlor trick to the grandest stage spectacle. The techniques developed in those early years are still studied by students of the craft today. The physical strength required to perform the escapes is matched by the mental fortitude needed to endure the pressure. This combination of body and mind created a legacy that transcends the specific tricks themselves. The name has become a verb, a shorthand for the act of breaking free from any kind of constraint. This linguistic shift shows how deeply the concept of escape has entered the collective consciousness. People speak of escaping a difficult situation or a bad habit with the same fervor as a physical escape from chains. The metaphor has taken root in the language of the world, far beyond the realm of performance. The story of the life serves as a reminder that even the greatest figures face the inevitability of mortality. Yet the work endures because it touched the fundamental human need for mystery and the thrill of survival. The quiet endurance of the story offers a comforting sense of continuity in a changing world. The final chapter of that life closed quietly, leaving behind a rich history of wonder and mystery. The silence after the last sentence should feel earned, a natural conclusion to a long journey. The memory of the escapes remains a source of comfort for those who seek to understand the human spirit. The legacy is not just in the tricks performed, but in the hope they inspired in others. That hope continues to live on in the hearts of those who watch and wonder. The story remains a testament to the power of human connection in the pursuit of extraordinary goals. Even in death, the legacy continued through the family members who inherited the work and the spirit. The bonds formed with those around shaped the trajectory of the life and career. From the brother to the loyal assistants, these connections provided the stability needed to take risks. The early 20th century presented a world of rapid industrial change and shifting social norms. The Great War had recently ended, leaving a population eager for connection with lost loved ones. Spiritualism flourished in this vacuum of certainty and offered comfort to grieving families across the nation. Many people attended seances, hoping to hear the voice